Jim Crow explicitly created a separate system of law for Black Americans and treated them as inferior. There's nothing in the law like that. That's not only an overstatement, it's just an outright lie. But, says Jamel Hill, all of corporate America should resonate to the lie. The law imposes new voter identification requirements for absentee ballots. Well, clearly that's racist. I mean, you mean you have to show that you are who you say you are when you vote absentee? If you can explain to me how that's racist, I'm willing to hear it. Anyone? Bueller? It limits the use of ballot drop boxes. Oh, you mean like ballot drop boxes where people could just stuff the ballot box or take ballots out of the ballot box? It hands state officials more power over local elections. Even before the legislation passed, many voters of color in Georgia faced hours-long queues at the polls. By the way, voter suppression doesn't involve long lines, any more than long lines at Disneyland are ride suppression. You know what voter suppression is? Voter suppression is where you don't get to vote. Making those waits even more arduous, the new law bans giving food and water to people in line to vote. That's not even true. It bans giving any gift to people in line when they are within 150 feet of the polling place. You can bring water with you. There are people outside who can give you water. This is just not true.
Ben Shapiro is at it again, guys. As you saw in that opening clip, Ben Shapiro is essentially saying that there is no voter suppression. There's no effort to limit the right to vote, access to voting in the Georgia voting rights bill. And he says something can only be discriminatory, can only be racist if it explicitly, as in the pre-civil rights era, excludes certain people from voting in a very open way. This is ridiculous. I want to focus in on a few things here. One, discrimination can happen even without it being explicit. All there takes to be discrimination is that if the Georgia lawmakers, overwhelmingly white and conservative, think that by passing voter rights reforms that will stop black people and other minorities from voting, that makes it discriminatory. That makes it prejudicial. It doesn't even necessarily matter if at the end of the day the moves work, as long as that was the intent by lawmakers to make it harder for black people to vote. That is like a racist law. It is. It doesn't matter if some of the provisions are not necessarily Jim Crow-esque. It matters that the intent is black people had the audacity to win in Georgia, and they won, and now we're going to make it harder for them to do so. But I want to focus in specifically on his comment around voter lines. He said voter lines are not voter suppression, just like lines at Disneyland are not ride suppression. But let's examine that. Any reasonable person will tell you that long lines can be a deterrence. If you told me that I could go to a theme park and I would have to wait 3 hours in line for every ride, there's a chance not only that I would ride less rides, but that I might not go to the park at all because it's not worth the hassle. I have to pay the money, get there, all of those things, just to not be able to do it maybe. Just to not be able to have a good, fun day. And so if voting lines are long, there are going to be some people, even if not a ton of people, even if it's only 1 or 2% of the people that plan to vote, that will not vote because the lines are too long, especially if you're making it, and Shapiro lies here, it does ban most people from giving food and water to folks at the polls. Don't listen to the misinformation and disinformation. They're banning people from basic sustenance to try and scare them out of the lines that they're going to make long. Right? Like, let's be real here. That's the thing. I would be less likely to go to a theme park if the lines were longer. And some voters will be less likely to go vote if the lines are longer. And let's also be clear here. Disneyland sells express passes. A lot of theme parks sell express passes for a reason. Because people with money would rather spend their money than wait in line. And while there's no provision in Georgia, at least yet, that allows wealthier people to pay money to skip the voting line, it does show that long lines bother people, and people would be willing to spend money, hard-earned money, to skip those lines, knowing that the lines have a deterrent effect, and that people will say to themselves, I can get more fun out of the park with more money because I can skip lines and ride more rides, because the lines are ride suppression, just like voting lines are voter suppression. And let's also be clear here that this is not one theme park where everyone there has to wait in the same lines, even if you exclude the express pass, the VIP passes. In Georgia, just as in many states, voting lines are not equal. That's part of the issue here. It's not as if every county, every city, every municipality in Georgia has the exact same voting lines. Everyone waits exactly 30 minutes on average, whether you're in a white rural district or a black urban district or a more multiracial suburban district. That's not the case. Districts that tend to be more democratic, more racialized, they have longer lines. They have longer lines. And so when you implement policies that make lines longer and make it harder to stay in line because you can't get food or water or anything like that, you are making it harder for some people, but not everyone. And so it's as if to say at the park, at a Disneyland park, if you made it so that black people had to wait in line longer on average, you didn't explicitly say that they had to, that because they were black they had to, but you made their lines longer, they would ride less rides than white people that didn't have those long lines. So just Ben Shapiro is off his rocker here again. This is clear voter suppression. There's a lot of debate among polling scientists, listen to 538, about how much this will have an effect. Will it work? Is there a chance that because Democratic voters now more than ever are highly educated, that this might actually hurt a lot of working class, blue collar, white Republicans? We don't know the ultimate effect of the Georgia voting rights bill, but what we do know is the intent. People like Ben Shapiro will never admit it, but black people, young people, progressives, other minorities had the audacity to defeat Trump and his white nationalist thugs in November and again in January, and Republicans hate losing a fair and square election, and they're trying to rig it next time. There is no other explanation.